Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate for tonight on Draftkings, and it should be a pretty good game. I am looking forward to it. We got 50-point over-under. We're playing at the Superdome in New Orleans, and I don't know what it is, but I just enjoy watching games being played in the Superdome. You get new exciting rookie quarterback Justin Herbert, who's been playing pretty well recently, going up against future Hall of Famer Drew Brees. You get Alvin Kamara, who's one of the most electric players in all of football. Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Joshua Kelly. Unfortunately, no Michael Thomas. He's not playing due to disciplinary reasons, not because of the injury, but apparently he got into I believe I read it was like a fist fight with one of his teammates, so not sure what that's all about, but unfortunately he's not going to be playing in this game. But anyway, before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate that. And if you don't follow me over on social media, handles in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want to support my content over on Patreon, that is always much appreciated. You get access into the entire NFL DFS data sheet, and you can hop into the Discord chat as well. So link down below in the description if you're interested for that. If not, that's fine. Let's just dive into tonight's showdown slate, the Chargers versus the Saints. So we'll start with the quarterback position as always. Both these guys are a bit pricey, but I think it's fine for a showdown slate. I do have interest in both of these guys. Not really sure I'd try to go out of my way to put them in the captain spot. I'd try to reserve that for a skill position player. And if you got the money, I'd love to be able to get Kamara in there, but I do realize that's going to cost an arm and a leg. But these guys are both fine for the flex spots. You can make a case for them in the captain spots as well. Did I say captains? The captain spot as well. But we'll start with Drew Brees, 10,400. They do have the higher implied team total here at 28.5. The Chargers defense, it's not terrible, but it's not something I'm going to shy away from here. And the Saints, I mean, they should put up a ton of points here at home. Now, not having Michael Thomas is obviously going to limit his upside, but I still think Drew Brees is going to get his 250-plus yards and a multi-touchdown performance. I don't think he's going to just blow up in this game, but I think it's going to be serviceable enough for a showdown slate where you're going to want him in your flex spot. If you're looking at his numbers so far this season, they haven't been like amazing, but it's not terrible either. About 250 passing yards per game, 2 passing touchdowns per game. Obviously going to do nothing in the run game. He does not run the ball. But 108 QBR rating, and the Chargers are 18th DVA versus the pass this season, allowing nearly 25 Draftkings points per game to quarterbacks, 275 passing yards per game, and 2 passing touchdowns per game as well. So Drew Brees, he's fine. They do have the higher implied team total here, and since Michael Thomas is out, if you want to pair him up with his pass catchers, which obviously I want to do on a showdown slate, it's not going to completely break the bank unless you're using Alvin Kamara, which he is one of his main pass catchers. But besides Kamara, the rest of those guys aren't super expensive. Traquan Smith's not that expensive. Emmanuel Sanders isn't going to break the bank. And Jared Cook, if he happens to play, he is questionable. He's not super expensive as well. So it's not super hard to pair him up with his pass-catching options. But I like Justin Herbert, I think, a little bit more than Drew Brees. They're very, very close for me. But the Saints, if they're up quite a bit, which Vegas does have them as 7-point favorites, I could see them leaning on the run in the second half. But Justin Herbert, they should be playing from behind here, and he's actually looked pretty solid the past few weeks. And the Saints defense, it is pretty good, but Marshawn Lattimore is questionable for this game. If he happens to miss, it's going to be an upgrade for the Chargers pass game. If he's in, it's going to be a bit of a downgrade. But overall, they have given up some points to quarterbacks so far this season if you're looking at the matchup for the Chargers. Now, they are 11th DVA versus the pass, the Saints are, but they're still allowing 23.3 DraftKings points per game to quarterbacks, 253 passing yards per game, and nearly 3 passing touchdowns per game. And Herbert's got some fine options to the ball, too. He's got Keenan Allen, who's obviously a very good receiver. He's got Hunter Henry. Mike Williams is questionable for this game. It sounds like he's going to play. And unfortunately, he did lose Austin Eckler, which is a nice pass-catching running back. But I still think Herbert should end up having a pretty solid game here. He's averaging over 300 passing yards per game so far, 1.5 passing touchdowns per game, 35 pass attempts per game, and 8.7 yards per attempt with a 72% completion percentage, which is actually a little bit above Drew Brees. It's a slightly smaller sample size, but still, Justin Herbert has not looked that bad. And with them being 7-point dogs on the road here, this should be a pretty pass-heavy approach, and I think he should have a pretty solid game. So I like both these guys. I might just give a slight edge to Justin Herbert because I think the pass volume is going to be there. But Drew Brees is at the higher team total, so you're kind of splitting hairs there. But I'd try to fit both in my lineup if I can. I understand if you can't because they're pretty expensive. But I think both are very viable options. I just don't see myself really getting them into my captain spot too much. I'd try to get Kamara, although if I can't get Kamara, I'd try to get one of the cheaper pass catching options. Maybe someone like Emmanuel Sanders or Keenan Allen, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But we'll move on to the running back position. And up top, it's the obvious play on this slate. It's Alvin Kamara, and it's going to be hard to not play him. I mean, the guy is just one of the best players in all of football, and he's one of the best running backs in all of football as well. And look, he just does so much in the passing game, which makes him so good on a PPR site like Draftkings. Like, if you're looking at his receiving numbers alone, I mean, 80 receiving yards per game, 8.5 targets per game, 7.5 catches per game, nearly a receiving touchdown per game, a near 30% target share and a 46% weight opportunity share. Those numbers are better than a lot of wide receivers. And they're actually better than a lot of wide receivers on this slate if you guys want to compare them when we go to the wide receiver page. But Alvin Kamara, I mean, the guy's been fantastic. If you take away last week's game, which I know, I mean, it's kind of pointless to do, but they were leading for a bit, and they didn't have to really, or for a bit, they were leading most of the game. They didn't really have to use Kamara in the passing game too much, but I believe he was around 10 targets per game heading into last week, and a little bit over 8 catches per game, and nearly 90 receiving yards per game with over a 30% target share. So those numbers, they come down a little bit, but his upside in the passing game is just absolutely awesome. And he had 20 points last week, which did feel disappointing, but that's pretty good when you have a 20-point game, and that can feel pretty disappointing. A couple weeks before that, he scored nearly 50 DraftKings points. And I think the last time Kamara was on a showdown slate, I want to say he scored nearly 70, 80 points in the captain spot. I can't remember exactly what it was, but the guy went absolutely off. I think he had around 50 real-life DraftKings points. He was fantastic. But Alvin Kamara, he's obviously a great player. He's super expensive, but I think you're going to find a way to get him in your lineup. If it means you have to go with a punt 200, 300 option at one of the other positions, or like 600 or something, I feel like it's almost somewhat necessary. Now, you could get away with it if Kamara just does not get into the end zone, but I mean, this guy always seems to find the end zone. He's averaging a rushing touchdown per game and nearly a receiving touchdown per game. Now, he doesn't run the ball too much, only 12.5 rushing attempts per game, but he's very efficient with his touches. Like, Alvin Kamara touches are worth a lot more than some other touches from other running backs in the league, but still 60 rushing yards per game and a rushing touchdown on the ground. And when you throw in the receiving work he gets, you're kind of getting like an RB2, RB1 hybrid with a wide receiver one as well. Like, Alvin Kamara is just so good. Now, if you're looking at how the Chargers have done versus the running back position this season, they're 13th DVA versus run, which is actually pretty good, and only 22.5 DraftKings points per game to running backs and 78 rushing yards per game. But they actually have given up quite a bit of receptions, like nearly 7.5 receptions per game to running backs and 40 receiving yards per game as well. So don't really care about the matchup anyway with Alvin Kamara. He's going to get his no matter what, and yeah, he is a great play on this slate. I don't really think anyone needs to be told that, but if you need a confidence boost in Kamara, I want to play him in my lineups for sure. Austin Eckler, you can't play him. He is not going to be playing, unfortunately, with the injury. So that means Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson are in line for quite a bit of a workload here. Now, I think it's going to be a bit of a split. And Kelly is a lot more expensive than Justin Jackson, so I'm going to have a hard time justifying the price tag because I do feel like this is going to be a bit of an even split here. I think Kelly will see the majority of the touches, but I still think it's going to be pretty close where an $8,200 price tag might be a bit much for me when I can get Justin Jackson at $4,400. And if I'm paying up for Kamara and I want some of the quarterbacks, it's going to be really hard to fit in a Joshua Kelly as well. And it's not even a good matchup versus the Saints. They've been pretty stingy versus running backs for quite some time now. Last year, they were one of the best teams versus running backs. Year before that as well. And if you're looking at the exact numbers of how they've done versus the run, they're 4th DVA versus the run, allowing 24 DraftKings points per game to running backs, which isn't that bad, 84 rushing yards per game, but still, this is a pretty strong rush defense, and with them being 7-point dogs on the road, I feel like it's going to be a pretty pass-heavy attack for the Chargers. So Kelly at 8,200, I'm not loving that price tag. I'd probably just try to get Justin Jackson if I feel like I have to play a Chargers running back just because he's nearly half the price, and they should get a similar workload here. I think Kelly's going to get more touches, but I think it's going to be close enough to where Justin Jackson will be the better value play at only 4,400. And then dropping down to Latavius Murray here at 4,800. He was kind of the reason where Alvin Kamara didn't have a huge ceiling game because Kamara was fine. He scored 20 points, but Latavius Murray, I know he scored, I can't remember if he scored 2 touchdowns. I know he scored 1 touchdown. He was still in some Kamara work, which sucked because it capped his upside. I can't expect Latavius Murray to do that each and every single week, but he has value in this offense. He'll get the occasional double-digit touches where he finds the end zone, and if he does that, he'll be fine at 4,800, but for the most part, I just prefer to get Kamara here. You can play both. I mean, there's scenarios where they both have decent games. Like last week, they both had some pretty decent games. They didn't have huge games, but they had decent games. Latavius Murray certainly paid off his price tag. If you think of what he's done this season, he's averaging double-digit touches per game at 11 rushing attempts per game and 46 rushing yards per game. Also half a rushing touchdown per game as well. And if they're up, they'll give Latavius Murray the rock. I mean, he's just not going to see the field here. He's going to be on the field and getting touches. It's just his touches aren't going to be as valuable as Alvin Kamara touches, and he's not nearly as involved in the passing game. But he's about $8,000 cheaper than Kamara, so I don't mind using Latavius Murray at $4,800. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up if you'd want to use Latavius Murray or Justin Jackson here. I'd probably side with Murray just because I think he's got a higher chance of getting into the end zone because the Saints do have a touchdown higher team total. So I guess if you had to pick between the two, Murray or Justin Jackson, I'll side with Murray, but it is very close between those guys. Justin Jackson, 4,400. I kind of touched on that when I talked about Eckler. This is not a good matchup, but since they're going to see, I think, somewhat similar touches, I think Kelly will out-touch Justin Jackson, but the snaps should be decently close. I do think everything will favor Kelly here, but I don't think it's going to be enough for where he should be double the price tag of Justin Jackson. So I think Justin Jackson is a fine value running back at 4,400. Then the rest of these guys, I would not go below Justin Jackson. I gotta fix this. That's gonna annoy me. Okay, so anyway, going up top here to the wide receiver position, we have Michael Thomas, who's not going to be playing in this game, which is going to open up some things for Traquan Smith, Emmanuel Sanders, and Callaway at $600. So we'll just skip down to Keenan Allen. He comes in at $9,400. Now, Marshawn Lattimore, he's questionable for this game. We'll see if he plays. But even if he does play, he doesn't typically travel into the slot. We know Keenan Allen does most of his work out of the slot, 44% in the slot, 32% on the left side, and 23% on the right side. So he's not going to fully avoid Marshawn Lattimore, but for the most part, he should, since the majority of his snaps do come from the slot, and we don't usually see Lattimore travel into the slot much. And Keenan Allen's obviously the preferred option to pair with Justin Herbert. I almost said Philip Rivers. I was like, that's not right. But Keenan Allen, he's getting over 11 targets per game right now, a 36% target share, 82% weighted opportunity share, a near 40% market share of the team's air yards, 81 receiving yards per game, 8 catches per game. So yeah, he's pretty good on PPR sides because he gets peppered with targets, and I do expect the Chargers to be playing from behind here. And look, the Saints defense, it is pretty good. They're 11th DVA versus the pass, only allowing 30 DraftKings points per game to wide receivers. But I still think Keenan Allen should have a decent game here. The volume alone is enough for me to have some interest. Matchup isn't great, and he is pretty pricey. But I mean, I would expect double-digit targets here, and Keenan Allen's been fine the past few weeks with Justin Herbert. So I do like Keenan Allen. I just don't love the price tag, but he is the preferred pairing with Justin Herbert if salary wasn't a factor. Traquan Smith, $7,000. He's coming off a pretty good game, and I'm actually kind of surprised he's priced over Emmanuel Sanders. Like, I know he had a good game last week, but just heads up, I would rather play Emmanuel Sanders if these guys were the same prices. I'd rather play Emmanuel Sanders over Traquan Smith, and since Traquan Smith's about $1,400 more expensive than Sanders, I'll say Traquan is reserved for GPPs only. I think he'll have lower ownership. I think a lot of people play Emmanuel Sanders, especially without Michael Thomas. Sanders saw 9 targets last week compared to Traquan Smith. I believe he had 6. Let me just double check. No, I'm sorry, he had 4. He actually caught all 4 of his targets for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. You can't expect 2 touchdowns every single week from him. So I would say Sanders over Traquan Smith personally. Like I said, Sanders nearly had double-digit targets last week, and he's roughly $1,500 cheaper. And we're going to need some value if we're going to pay up for the quarterbacks, and if we're going to pay up for Alvin Kamara, which almost feels like is almost nearly a necessity for the most part. So I like saving some money with Sanders there over Traquan Smith. But both are fine options. I just feel a little bit safer with Sanders. He's got the higher target share in this offense. He's actually got a bigger market share of the team's air yards as well, and a higher weighted opportunity share. In the matchup versus the Chargers, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's not awful. They're 18th DVA versus the pass, allowing nearly 40 DraftKings points per game to wide receivers, which are softer than the Saints. So Sanders at 5,600, I think he's a very solid play, and I expect him to be quite popular at that price point with no Michael Thomas. Mike Williams, 5,000. He is questionable for this game, so we'll have to see how that goes if he happens to be in and Marshawn Lattimore happens to be in. I'd imagine you'd see a decent amount of him outside, which wouldn't be great, but as of right now, both these guys are questionable, so we'll have to see. It sounds like Mike Williams is going to play, though. He got some practices in, and I assume he's going to play. And since the Chargers are going to be more than likely trailing this game, we've seen upsets every single week, so it's not a given. But I mean, the volume should be there. He's a big play guy for the most part. But and when I said the volume should be there, I mean, like, he's going to get involved, but it's not going to be like Keenan Allen volume. He's going to get you a few targets. but it has been a bit sporadic the past few weeks. Like last week, he only saw 1 target, which obviously we need more than 1 target out of him. The week before that, 4, then the week before that, he had 9. I think he's probably going to be anywhere from around like 4 to potentially 10 targets here. I mean, if he does play. So we'll have to see. 5,000 though, it's kind of an iffy play for me. I'd rather get $600 more for Sanders, but Mike Williams, he's fine in tournaments, and if you can't get all the way to Keenan Allen, Mike Williams is a fine pairing with Justin Herbert. Then Jalen here at 4,200, he's okay, but it's a low volume play for the most part. I mean, he's getting nearly a little bit under 2 targets per game right now. And I feel like he'll just have ownership alone just based off of his 72-yard touchdown catch last week, but that's not something you can bank on every week. Like if you're looking at the past games, 4.3 points on 2 catches. He caught another touchdown in week 2, but that was his only catch. So he's had 2 games now where he's caught 1 ball where they happen to go for a touchdown. He had 8 points, and the week before that, 2 points. I wish he was a bit cheaper here. I feel like he's a bit overpriced, but at least he's going to be on the field, which is the nicest thing I can say. But he's not a high volume play here. And Johnson, 1,800. I don't feel like really chasing that touchdown he had last week. But if Mike Williams happens to be out, I mean, these guys are going to get a few more targets dispersed through the offense. We'll have to keep our eyes open for the Mike Williams news. And then after that, it gets a bit ugly. You could look at Callaway just because Michael Thomas is out, but he's not going to be a high volume play. But he is cheap enough at $600 where I think it's at least a little interesting. And he did see 1 target last week, so I guess it's okay. Other than that, Jason Moore, I mean, if Mike Williams happens to be out, I guess it's okay, but it's just a $200 pump play. We see these guys sometimes work out, and if they do work out, you're probably fitting in guys like Kamara, Justin Herbert, Drew Brees, and Emmanuel Sanders, and those kind of guys, and Keenan Allen. So if one of those $200 punt guys work out, I mean, you have a decent chance of having a pretty solid game. Then moving on to the tight end spot. We have 2 really just clear options here in Hunter Henry and Jared Cook. Now, Jared Cook is questionable for this game. It sounds like he's going to play. If he doesn't, I guess we could get burned by Troutman and Josh Hill again. But Hunter Henry, 7,800, he would be the preferred option here, but that comes with a price tag as well. But the New Orleans Saints, they have not been good at all versus tight ends this season. They've actually been pretty much the worst team. Actually, I think Atlanta's giving up slightly more points per game right now, but it's very close. They're allowing 25 DraftKings points per game to the tight end spot right now, 82 receiving yards per game, and over a receiving touchdown per game as well. So Hunter Henry, if you got the money for him, I think he's a pretty solid option here. 6.5 targets per game, which isn't a ton, but 61 receiving yards per game, a 20% market share of the team's air yards, 8 out of 8.5, and a 43% weighted opportunity share with a 20% target share. So if you got the money for Hunter Henry, he's in a very good spot as the New Orleans Saints seem to be really struggling versus tight ends so far to start the season. Jared Cook, 6,200. He's a bit pricey, but when you take out Michael Thomas, the offense should revolve around Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook as long as he plays, and then like Emmanuel Sanders for the most part. So Jared Cook, I mean, he's no stranger to getting into the end zone with Drew Brees. About 4.5 targets per game right now. Only a 12% target share, but he's actually got a 20% market share of the team's air yards right now. And if you're looking at how the Chargers have done versus tight ends this season, 15.3 points per game given up, 58 receiving yards, about a receiving touchdown per game. So he's a solid option at 6,200. It's just we got to make sure he's going to actually be playing, because if he doesn't play, obviously we can't play him. And that will boost guys like Adam Troutman and Josh Hill. Although I know Troutman, whatever it was. I know a lot of people played him last week. I actually played him in one of my lineups. I think it was a cash game. He was pretty chalky, so it didn't really kill you. He's only 2,500, but he got a 0. It is what it is. But it could be a nice post hype play. Those are one of my favorite things to do in tournaments, is play a post hype guy, like a guy that was really popular the week before that. Then you play him again at half the ownership, and sometimes it works out. I think Derrick Henry was in a scenario like that this year where he dudded versus Jacksonville, and the week after that, I believe it was versus Minnesota. He had 30 DraftKings points, so he could be one of those post-hype plays. Brandon Cooks today, actually, he went off today, and he did absolutely nothing the week prior, so could be if Jared Cook happens to be out. If he's in, just don't even think about it. And Parham, I apologize. He actually caught a touchdown last week, but he's not going to be barely on the field, and he's not going to get he's not going to get really much volume. And really neither the rest of these guys. Josh Hill maybe gets a random touchdown. He's getting a target per game right now. Maybe he finds a random touchdown near the end zone, but outside of that, you can't really trust it. And if Jared Cook happens to be out, yeah, it's a boost, but It's just not a high volume guy. And I realize he's cheap though, so he's a fine like dart throw. But yeah. Moving on to the defenses, we have the Saints and the Chargers. If you had to play one, I'm going to go with the Saints, obviously, as a home favorite, 7-point favorites at home, the lower implied team total. I don't really feel comfortable playing the Chargers defense versus a offense like the Saints. I know they're missing Michael Thomas, but you still got Alvin Kamara, you got Emmanuel Sanders, you got Traquan Smith, you got Drew Brees at quarterback, which I know he's not like a super high upside quarterback these days, but he's not one that's going to make a ton of mistakes. And you got Latavius Murray as well, so I'll take the Saints defense here over the Chargers, and I think they are playable going up against a rookie quarterback on the road. The rookie quarterback's on the road, not the Saints are on the road. So, and if you're playing the Chargers defense, you are getting very contrarian. I assume your lineup is very Chargers heavy with maybe someone like at least just Kamara as a run back, but outside of that, I can't really see wanting to play the Chargers defense much, or if any. And the kickers, they are what they are. I mean, Will Lutz, he would be the preferred kicker here, but I mean, just good luck projecting kickers. Although he does have the higher team total, and he's kicking at home, and he's a very good kicker. So, yeah, I like Will Lutz. I think he's a fine option. He should be pretty safe. I mean, these guys don't have a ton of upside, but if he nails a couple of field goals and gets some extra points from touchdowns, he'll be okay at 4,000. And then Chargers kicker, it's fine. Yeah, they're kickers. You can't really project them. You're just hoping they nail some field goals. And I can see the Chargers moving the ball well, but maybe they don't finish the job, so maybe they rack up a ton of field goals, and that could work out for Michael Badgley. So. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, leave a like. And if you want to support more content over on Patreon, do that as well. And then social medias are down below in the left-hand corner of your screen. And I think that's just about it. So appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one.